This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
We have the latest update in the search for kidnapped students in northwest Nigeria. The DRC delays the rollout of AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine as the World Health Organization says safety concerns are being reviewed. And South Africa's Table Mountain National Park battled an upsurge in criminal activities. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at other stories coming up this hour. In business, African economy is expected to grow by an average of 3.4% this year, according to a report by the African Development Bank. And in sports, new African football president Patrice Motsepe promises inclusivity and unity as he takes over at CAF. We begin the hour in Nigeria, where police and the military have been deployed in the search for about 39 students kidnapped from a forestry college in Kaduna State. Gunmen raided the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization in Mando on Thursday night. Officials said the army rescued 180 students in the early hours of Friday. Thursday's incident is the fourth mass school abduction since December in a country where violence is on the increase.
We came to the school in the morning and we were told that some of the rescued students have been taken to the late military barracks, while others have been admitted in hospital. We are appealing to the government to help secure the safe release of our children.
Let's now bring in Deji Badmas live for us in Lagos for an update on this story. Deji, police and the military are pursuing the kidnappers. What's the latest?
Well, Peninah, the search is still on. The military, the security agencies are not saying anything yet, but there is a frantic search going on for the past 24 hours now, trying to locate the students and to find out those who actually carried out this attack. But what I can tell you, Peninah, is that this is a big surprise that this would happen, and it's happening just a week or so after the president had given the assurance that there will be no more attack on schools of this nature and then this. And what is actually surprising about this is this actually happened in a tertiary institution. And then this tertiary institution is actually located right in the city in Kaduna. As a matter of fact, I grew up around that place. There is a military facility directly opposite the school. This military facility is actually Nigeria's biggest military academy. It's called the Nigerian Defense Academy. So that whole area is more like a militarized zone. So it's actually a surprise that these individuals, probably bandits, were able to gain access to that area, gain access to the school, and then carry out the attacks. I've been speaking with one of the students' leaders in that school who actually witnessed what happened. And he told me that it happened at about 11 p.m. and that, you know, this guy, the bandits now came in and then met a student, that a student actually led them to the hostel where the students that they took were. And of course, the military responded very, very quickly, and that's understandable because there's a military facility around the area. The military responded very quickly. Unfortunately, they were not able to get all the students. So the bandits were able to escape with some of the students. And so the search is still on, but questions are being asked as to how this could happen right in the city and right before a military, one of the biggest military facilities in this country. So it's a big surprise, and but the search is still on. Everyone is waiting to hear what comes out of this.
All right, Deji, thank you very much for that. Deji Badmas live for us in Lagos. For more analysis on that situation in Nigeria, let's now cross over to Fola Aina, an international security and development policy expert and a doctoral fellow at the African Leadership Center, King's College in London. Thank you very much, Fola, for joining us. There are fears that state authorities are making this situation worse by letting kidnappers go unpunished and paying them off to release their captives. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much for having me. Well, I think the major problem is the fact that the response in the region, the northwestern region that has been ravaged by these acts of armed banditry, is somewhat uncoordinated. And so the fact that some of the governors or some of the state authorities within the region are willing to engage with these bandits and some aren't makes the situation a bit complicated. But by actually paying ransom, even though most of them deny that they do pay these sums, they give the impression that the armed bandits could be emboldened. And so by emboldening them in this way, they tend to come back to keep, perpetuating the acts that they are carrying out in the region. And doing that is also a reflection of the fact that some of these states are very weak. And so there's an argument about the fact that the monies that would have been used to pay these bandits could otherwise have been used, to provide for or address some of the socio-economic conditions in the region that has helped to perpetuate, these acts of terrorism. So rather than paying the bandits, these sums of money, why not invest this money in socio-economic initiatives that helps to address some of the underlying triggers of the violence we're beginning to witness, that's become more endemic in the region.
Right, and Thursday night's kidnapping is the 4th since December. Listening to our correspondent describe how it happened, where it happened, smack in the heart of the city. And he says in front of one of the biggest military zones in that region. Do you think there's a lapse in security? And also, what steps should Nigeria take to improve security in those affected areas?
Oh, yes. So this is clearly a reflection of a lapse in security. The Kaduna State government just this week released its annual security report. And in that annual security report that covered the period of the year 2020, it was revealed that bandits had killed a total of 937 persons in Kaduna State and kidnapped 1,972 people alone in the span of just 1 year. Also, considering the concerns in the region, in Zamfara State, which is also in the region, the federal government has announced plans to deploy an additional 6,000 troops, to try to contain the growing insecurity condition caused by bandits. This is also taking into fact that there are at least over 30,000 armed bandits in the region, according to the Zamfara State governor. So yes, definitely, this is a clear indication of a serious security situation. But beyond all of this, I would say that a more pragmatic approach is an approach that is reflective of a multi-layered, response to the crisis. So on the one hand, addressing the kinetic measures, and on the other hand, addressing the non-kinetic measures. So things like the socio-economic conditions, taking into account issues of poverty, unemployment, lack of jobs, lack of proper access, adequate education, lack of access to proper healthcare services, on the one hand, and also taking into account also the issues of climate-induced conflicts, like deforestation, and other consequences of climate change that also helps to exacerbate these conflicts. And then on the other hand, beyond just deploying additional troops, the response, a more effective military approach, we want that improves coordination between the members of the armed forces, whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army, all of whom have special operatives in the region. An approach could be the establishment of a joint special operations command that makes it more effective in terms of coordination and response for rapid deployments, to addressing some of these issues. And that way, the military might have better results. And then on the other hand, there's the need for more collaboration, on actionable intelligence, whether it's through human intelligence or through signals intelligence with the intelligence agencies. Apparently, there seems to be a gap in this area. Until these issues are brought together and properly addressed, then the situation in the region might continue to linger on.
All right, Fola, thank you very much for those insights. Fola Aina live for us there in London. Now, Turkey says it has made diplomatic contact with Egypt. It is unclear what, if any, discussions have taken place. Egypt's state-run news agency MENA reported Turkey proposed a meeting to discuss further cooperation. Both countries have been at the opposing sides of several issues, including the Libyan conflict. Their relations became tense following the ouster of Mohamed Morsi, Egypt's first democratically elected president. For more on this, we're joined by Mikhail Bardavid in Istanbul and Adel Mahri live for us in Cairo. Mikhail, let's begin with you. How is Turkey handling this issue, and when should we expect to see meetings between the two sides taking place?
Well, Turkey has given very clear messages that it is eager to ease ties with Egypt. Statements made by the highest level of officials have indicated this openness, so the door seems to be wide open from Turkey's side. Let me give you a few examples. Now, Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu had stated that Egypt's exploration bid had respected Turkey's continental shelf in the region and had paved the way for an agreement. He stated, and I quote, "As the two countries with the longest coastlines in the Eastern Mediterranean, if our ties and the conditions allow it, we can also negotiate a maritime demarcation deal with Egypt and sign it amongst ourselves." Now, there was a similar message given from Turkey's Defense Minister Hulusi Akar. He stated, quote, "We have many historical and cultural values in common with Egypt. When they are put in use, we consider that they may be different developments in the coming days." So an indication of potential meetings in the next coming days. There was also a critical message from Turkey's presidential spokesman, and this is significant because Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was one of the main critics of Egyptian President Sisi. So this represents potentially an olive branch from the highest level in Turkey. Ibrahim Kalin stated, and I quote, "A new chapter can be opened, a new page can be turned in our relationship with Egypt as well as other Gulf countries to help regional peace and stability. Egypt is an important country for the Arab world. It still remains the brain of the Arab world, the heart of the Arab world." So it seems that from Turkey's side, at least, meetings can take place very soon. It really seems to depend on Cairo's reactions.
Right. So, Adel, from what Mikhail is talking to us about, we're hearing a reconciliatory tone from Turkey. How is Cairo reacting to Turkey's latest stance?
Well, Cairo remains as it was during the past 8 years, despite the harsh criticism from Recep Tayyip Erdogan's administration against President El-Sisi himself and his administration. Egypt remains also quite discreet about this possible resumption of ties. When last September Turkey announced the continuation of intelligence cooperation between the two countries, Egypt chose to remain silent, and so does it seem that it's taking the same track also this week. Egypt appears to be quite cautious about how the ties will resume, despite previous announcement or earlier announcement that talks or ties with Egypt will resume without any prior condition. Cairo appears to be trying to set the ground rules for the resumption of ties. The state-owned Middle East news agency has cited an unnamed Egyptian official saying that for ties with Turkey to evolve, it needs to, first of all, respect international law and also stop interfering in domestic affairs, referring to previous Turkish accusations and description of the domestic politics in Egypt, specifically when it comes to handling the file of the Muslim Brotherhood, where many leaders of that group, which Egypt describes as a terrorist organization, many leaders of this group remain staying in Turkey, launching media channels that severely attacks and criticizes the Egyptian government on a daily basis. So there's a lot to talk about before trying to reach general agreements when it comes to the maritime economic zone between in the East Mediterranean, which Egypt and Turkey stand on different opposing sides in, and when it comes also to regional conflicts like Libya, Syria and Iraq, where also both Cairo and Ankara stand on opposing sides.
Right. Mikhail, coming to you and listening to Adel talk about the relationship that existed between Ankara and the Muslim Brotherhood. Ankara, of course, was a known supporter of Mohamed Morsi before his ouster in 2013. As such, relations with Egypt under President Fattah el-Sisi have been strained. Why are we seeing this change of heart by Turkey now?
Well, it seems this is a very strategic move for Turkey at this point, and a large part of the reason, of course, would be economic and the balance in the Eastern Mediterranean, though there are larger issues at hand as well. The main point seems to be, for Turkey at least, strategic in the Eastern Mediterranean. Ankara has repeatedly stated that it does not want to be excluded from the Eastern Mediterranean and that it would not allow it. Now, in November of 2019, Turkey signed a maritime agreement with Libya's government of national accord. The deal was criticized by Greece, which in return signed a deal with Egypt and Israel. Now, if Turkey finds a way to mend ties with Egypt and even potentially sign a maritime agreement with Cairo, it would mean it could change the balance in the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, Turkish officials have argued that signing a deal with Cairo would mean adding a larger maritime jurisdiction for Cairo. And let me add that Israel has also stated that it is eager to work with Turkey, as Israel's energy minister stated that they are ready for cooperation with Turkey and that they'd like to see Turkey as a regional partner. So also the strain in ties between Turkey and Egypt has negatively affected trade between the two countries, which has had a downward trend in recent years. So this could also be turned upward if we normalize ties between the two countries. So mostly the change of heart seems to be very economic at this point, but could result in a win-win situation for both countries. Nina?
All right, we'll keep a keen eye on these developments. Thank you very much, Mikhail Barjavid, live in Istanbul, and Adil Mahri, live in Cairo. The Chinese embassies in Canada and Japan are condemning remarks on Hong Kong made by foreign ministers of the Group of 7 nations. They are accusing China of oppression following a decision by Chinese lawmakers to improve Hong Kong's electoral system. The Chinese embassies say the G7 joint statement is a violation of international law and the basic norms in international relations. They reaffirmed China's determination to safeguard sovereignty and security and uphold the principles of one country, two systems, and Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong. They add that Hong Kong's electoral system is China's local electoral system, and how it is designed, developed, and improved are entirely China's internal affairs. Dozens of countries have expressed support for China over Xinjiang and Hong Kong at the current virtual session of the UN Human Rights Council. Belarus delivered a joint statement on behalf of 71 countries supporting China's position on Hong Kong issues. Meanwhile, Cuba, on behalf of 64 countries, said Xinjiang is an inseparable part of China. The statement urged all sides to abide by the principles of the UN Charter and stop interfering in China's internal affairs. Sri Lanka, the DPRK, South Sudan, Cameroon, Azerbaijan, and other developing countries also expressed their support. Meanwhile, China's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva urged constructive dialogue and cooperation rather than politicization of human rights issues.
These countries choose to ignore their own serious human rights problems while eager to point fingers at others, which fully demonstrates that human rights is but their tool for political manipulation. If they truly intend to promote and protect human rights, they should address deep-rooted human rights issues, including racial discrimination, social inequality, and police brutality, and protect the rights of refugees and migrants. They should take effective measures to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic and prevent heavy loss of lives of their people.
While China's 2 sessions have concluded, African scholars are drawing many lessons. Among them is Professor Ken Ife, a lead consultant on private sector development for the ECOWAS Commission. He commended China's economic discipline during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The level of discipline that was exhibited was just second to none. And so the whole economy is coming back just because of the quality of the leadership. It's something that we need to learn, and even the advanced countries have to learn from this. Consultations and dialogue and strategic planning, because you have a shared vision of the major arms of government, and you have a longer-term plan, and that means you are mobilizing resources and minimizing discordant nodes ahead. And so the synergy that they are generating by doing this approach is unstoppable, and we just need to congratulate, to thank them for what they are doing. It's a big example for us to follow.
This is Africa Live. It's coming up to 20 minutes into the hour. Let's take a quick break. Coming up. The DRC delays the rollout of AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine as the World Health Organization says safety concerns are being reviewed. And South Africa's Table Mountain National Park battles an upsurge in criminal activities.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The DRC has joined several other countries in delaying its rollout of the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine. Spokesmen from the Health Ministry cited the suspension of the jab in several European countries while addressing the issue. The country had received 1.7 million doses of the vaccine through the COVAX initiative. The World Health Organization is currently reviewing the AstraZeneca vaccine. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has stressed there is no reason to stop using the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine. After a slew of countries suspended the shot, health authorities in Denmark, Norway and Iceland suspended the use of AstraZeneca's jab on Thursday after reports of the formation of blood clots in some recipients. Italy and Thailand soon followed suit. Still, European health officials insist the vaccine's benefits outweigh its risks and could continue to be administered. Canada, Australia and Mexico said they will continue to use the AstraZeneca vaccine. China has sent a donation of Sinovac COVID vaccines to Djibouti as part of its aid program. The vaccines were shipped in the early hours of Saturday and are expected to reach the northeastern African nation soon. Sinovac vaccines have been approved for emergency use in several countries, including Indonesia, Brazil and Chile. There's good news coming out of South Africa. Scientists say survivors of the new variant might develop immunity against possible strains of the virus. The South African strain drove the country's second wave and created panic among health institutions and vaccine developers. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
The N501Y.V2 coronavirus mutation caused a headache for vaccine developers when it first emerged in South Africa last December. It became the dominant strain, pushing up infection and death rates faster than the first wave and brought vaccine efficacy into question.
Most vaccine immunogens were designed using the old variants, right? And so now going forward, we realize we need to include some kind of boosters, similar to like what we do with influenza vaccine, where we get a new vaccine every year.
South Africa was slapped with several travel bans as the variant spread to over 50 countries. But there's good news. Those who survived the highly infectious mutation may have developed immunity that could hold the key to fighting newer strains.
It might be good to take the blood from individuals who were infected with the new variant and isolate those individual antibodies so that you could use them for therapeutics. It is going to be useful for vaccine development because it's showing us that if you use this new variant as your immunogen, those antibodies will be effective against the new variant and also old lineages that were circulating previously.
Scientists have, however, not ruled out the possibility of the virus mutating further or more aggressively.
The more this virus propagates uncontrolled in the rest of the world, the more variants we will definitely see. We just have to be prepared by doing continual surveillance throughout the country, throughout South Africa, and even now throughout Africa. Because the main thing is that, as soon as you pick this up, you can contain it.
Mass vaccinations still remain the best remedy to COVID-19. Less than 10% of healthcare workers in the country are so far the only recipients as vaccines trickle in slowly.
By far the most important thing for control of the epidemic and for avoidance of variants to to emerge is to reduce the amount of virus that's circulating. So if we can have vaccines and reduce the amount of virus that is circulating in the population, the emergence of variants are going to be extraordinarily rare.
South African scientists have been hailed for their work, which could change the battle against COVID-19 for this country and for the rest of the world. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, Kenya's health ministry is seeking $14 million from the Treasury to expand vaccine storage facilities throughout the country. Currently, available ones are limited and can only achieve -20 degrees Celsius. This is way lower than the required temperature of -70 degrees Celsius. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi has more.
Kenya, just like many other African countries, has so far secured just over 1 million doses of the much-needed COVID-19 vaccines to protect its population. But health experts have been swift in raising fears of a possible extra logistical challenge in storage.
We've added other antigens, the HPV vaccine for women in reproductive age. So, and the capacity has not been improved. It's been the same as was used before, and all these have to be put in this same refrigerator. So there's obviously suboptimal volume capacity. And now on top of that, we've added now the vaccine for COVID, and this is why the volume is a big challenge.
This is, has been attributed a lot to underinvestment in medical research and medical facilities that have taken place over several decades, and this does pose a huge challenge to the vaccination program being rolled out across the continent.
The Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine currently has the most difficult storage needs of any of the vaccines. The vaccine has a recommended storage temperature of -70 degrees Celsius, raising concerns that it won't be a realistic fit for a rollout in most African settings. Uganda, for example, specifically applied for the AstraZeneca vaccine because it has no capacity to store other vaccines that require ultra-cold conditions.
We need to look at the financing capability in order to strengthen this infrastructure for storage of the vaccines that are coming in to deal with the immediate challenge of the vaccination rollout programs, but also in the future of how we can continue to manufacture and store treatments on the continent.
As African countries invest millions of dollars in storage and handling of COVID-19 vaccines, experts are also exploring how to do this, with a mind focused towards the future. Analysts say that rolling out COVID-19 vaccines in Africa will evidently require an enormous expansion in capacity of the continent's cold chain. But what remains clear is that investment in proper refrigeration at health facilities is crucial in preserving the integrity of vaccine cold chains. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
UNHCR Chief Filippo Grandi has reaffirmed the agency's commitment to supporting Uganda's refugee population. Grandi was on an official visit to the country. Among his stops was the Bidibidi refugee settlement, the largest in Africa. Uganda currently hosts around 1.4 million refugees. Grandi's visit comes as a funding shortfall has led to a cut in food rations for refugees.
Uganda has demonstrated exceptional generosity and hospitality, including in these difficult times of COVID, where, of course, movement of people is a very risky situation, but still hospitality has continued, but livelihoods have decreased because of lack of movement, because of less economic activity, so more help is needed also in that respect.
South African National Parks has received nearly $67 million from the government to help in recovery from the economic impact of COVID-19. In addition to facing economic challenges, the organization is also battling criminal activity in its parks. The country's famed Table Mountain National Park has become a hotspot for criminals. Renee Delcam has more.
Conservation is the primary mandate of South African national parks, but it now faces a number of other serious challenges.
When COVID started, when the parks were closed for tourism, it meant to us zero income into our books. And that has has impact on our operations because some of our operations were dependent on the income that we generate.
Besides firefighting, some of the operation's hardest hit include safety and security and the combating of wildlife crime. And the 25,000-hectare Table Mountain National Park has become a major crime hotspot.
We have a huge challenge with safety and security on the mountain. And we only have about 128 rangers that are employed by us. But we are fortunate in that we have your volunteers that are assisting us with safety and security. You have your honorary rangers that are assisting us with a presence and visibility.
SANParks has also joined forces with the City of Cape Town's law enforcement and the South African police to fight crime on the mountain. They recently saw the conviction of the so-called Table Mountain killer, who was sentenced to 2 life terms for murder, assault and robbery. And they've arrested numerous poachers and other wildlife criminals. This is the Kleinplaats Dam, one of the most pristine and remotest areas in the heart of the Table Mountain National Park. Unfortunately, it's also become a target for criminals.
We are now in the process of putting in technology. We are now in the process of forming a rapid response team manned by our visitor safety rangers to quickly respond to these crime incidents. We encourage people to walk in groups. We would like to have people to walk in groups. We would like to have people come to the park not too early in the morning or too late at night. We are going to ensure that whoever comes into the mountain is safe, and we are going to deal decisively with criminals.
And we would like maybe to assure our guests, even local and international, that we are addressing the security problems in our parks. And the tourists can come into our parks and enjoy the beauty of nature.
SANParks believes it will still feel the impact of COVID-19 for the next 2 to 3 years, but it is confident that its long-term crime-fighting strategy in the Table Mountain National Park will go a long way towards securing the iconic park well into the future. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And coming up in business news, African economy is expected to grow by an average of 3.4% this year, according to a report by the African Development Bank.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are 2 of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
report by the African Development Bank says economies on the continent are set to grow in 2021. According to the AFDB, African economies are expected to grow by 3.4%. This comes as economies on the continent have been hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The report added that the estimated growth will not stop the risk of increasing poverty. An estimated 39 million Africans are at threat of falling into extreme poverty. Ghana plans to raise $89 million from new taxes this year to cut its deficit and help smaller businesses weather the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. The government seeks to raise the cash using digital platforms to make collection more efficient so as to expand the tax base. Another $174 million will come from an increase in consumption taxes by 1 to 2 percentage points and by hiking taxes on petroleum and on bank profits. Some of the new funds will be used to support small businesses. Africa's top gold producer is also seeking to reduce a fiscal gap estimated to have reached a 13-year high in 2020 at 11.4% of gross domestic product. The government is targeting a budget deficit of 9% to 10% of GDP this year. International rating agencies have downgraded Ethiopia's long-term foreign and local currency sovereign credit ratings. Both S&P and Fitch ratings agencies say the country's debt burden has been worsened by the pandemic. The coronavirus pandemic has wreaked havoc on Ethiopia's tourism and highly devastated businesses dependent on the sector, as Coletta Wanjohi now explains.
According to rating agency S&P, Ethiopia's public debt stands at about $5.5 billion for the period between 2021 to 2024. Some economists say a downgrade of international credit worthiness by the agencies should not be a cause for worry.
If your private credits outstanding are relatively small compared to your bilateral, I mean, that's the case with Ethiopia. It's mostly bilateral. It's mostly with DFIs. It's very little, relatively speaking, compared to the outstanding amount what Ethiopia owes to private credit. As I said, there's only one Eurobond for $1 billion. In fact, from what I've seen, the latest number I've seen, this year, the interest payment is only $66 million, okay? So if that's the profile you're in, and you are not looking to issue in the near future Eurobonds or tap into the global private credit market, don't worry about the short-term hit to credit ratings.
Fitch Ratings highlights debts from Ethiopian state-owned enterprises to private creditors. Two of them, the national carrier Ethiopian Airlines and telecom company Ethio Telecom, reportedly have an outstanding debt of about $3.3 billion. The Ethiopian government says at the core of its economic reforms is to see that all state-owned enterprises meet payments.
From the balance sheet of the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, it's not erased. So there will be some restructuring of the remaining debt, which state-owned enterprise has to continue honoring, but it will not come to the budget as well. We will finance it through non-budgetary means. The main source of which we are expecting soon is from privatization proceeds, as well as is also dividend from state-owned enterprise as well.
Ethiopia has applied for debt relief under the G20 program for poor countries. In its defense, Ethiopia says it needs to redirect its resources towards the immunization of its population against COVID-19. The country of over 100 million people will receive about 8 million doses under the COVAX facility supported by the WHO. However, it will need to purchase more vaccines in order to meet the needs of more of its citizens. Other African countries like Chad are seeking relief too. Zemedene Negatu says African countries should focus more on growth than debt.
So I would tell African governments, don't be overly concerned. In fact, take advantage of this unique opportunity that you've been given to reprofile your debt, to restructure, and hopefully to cancel a certain amount of your debt. A year or two, you look pretty to these investors because now they know you've offloaded a lot of your debt. You're in a position to repay them, even with the 7, 8, or 10% yield that they're looking for. So don't be too concerned. Proceed what's in your best interest.
Rating agencies say there are other risks to Ethiopia's debt profile and credit worthiness, including the ongoing conflict in the country's north and tension over upcoming elections. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
A U.S. judge has ordered Chinese smartphone maker XIAOMI to be temporarily removed from a government blacklist. The ban restricting U.S. investment in the Chinese company was imposed before Donald Trump left office. The Defense Department placed XIAOMI on a list of companies allegedly linked to the Chinese military. XIAOMI filed an appeal against the blacklisting in January. It said Washington's moves were incorrect and had deprived the company of legal due process. South Africa conducted a successful rocket launch this week. The event saw the test rocket travel 17.9 kilometers into the air, achieving a new African hybrid rocket altitude record. The launch, conducted on Monday, 8th of March, proved to be third time lucky for the University of KwaZulu-Natal team after earlier failures in 2014 and 2019. With the details, here's Angelo Coppola from Johannesburg.
The successful launch saw the test rocket travel 17.9 kilometers into the air, achieving a new African hybrid rocket altitude record. It's been a difficult road with 2 failed attempts.
I'm happy to say that the predictions we made before the flight were pretty much bang on target. So it's really a validation process. We're validating flight performance of our propulsion system, of the vehicle itself, and of course of the software we use to do these simulations.
While the test was successful, the work done by the students in the program and the knowledge and experience they have gained have been invaluable.
So it's really important from the perspective of the students that have gone through our system, our postgraduate program, becoming skilled in fairly niche areas and just completing the loop. Engineering is product development. It's all about going from concept to final testing. And we've been able to do that.
The Phoenix program doesn't operate in a vacuum. Alongside it is the Sapphire program.
And the purpose of that program is to develop a propulsion system that is able to propel a small satellite launch vehicle into orbit so that we can start delivering satellites from that continent. We are about 3 years into that program. And later this year, we're hoping to do our first hardware test, a full-scale engine test of a prototype engine.
The 2 programs are beginning to deliver, but they require significant funding. The Department of Education, Science and Innovation have been funding the program thus far.
Sapphire is all about some big things, and we're throwing ourselves at the problem. We're making excellent headway, and we're really pretty optimistic that if we are able to secure funding, we're going to be able to develop a launch system, an indigenous launch system, to be able to launch small satellites from the African continent, and also to service the commercial market.
Rocket science in South Africa is due to benefit from this latest victory, and that covers the students as well as the industry itself and the country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
South African mining production figures released by Statistics South Africa for January disappointed analysts. Total mining output dropped sharply by 6.2% year-on-year, following a contraction of 1.8% in December 2020. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
December and January mining production is volatile generally. Despite this, production isn't recovering as quickly as expected.
Basically diamonds, the minerals and manganese. That's doing slightly better. The rest are all still down. So there's certainly a production adjustments that are taking place. And I cannot help but repeat that we know that about 50,000 of the workforce is not back because of the risk factor and the adjustment to new procedures, new operational procedures, and the logistics.
There are major concerns about the logistics when moving the country's commodities to ports of departure for export markets.
I was in a meeting about coal. 10 million tons of coal can't get to the harbor because of rail problem, and chrome isn't much better. So the logistics re-engaging operations are actually taking time.
South Africa's mining sector remains a significant contributor to the country's economy.
And being in the order of 7-8% of GDP. So whatever happens with mining this year, you have to multiply by 0.8 to understand what the impact is. So if we grow slightly, then it would be not much, but it would contribute to actually stabilize the overall value.
While there might be some debate about whether the South African mining sector is a sunrise or a sunset industry, there's no question that it's making a massive contribution to the country's GDP, especially in these times of COVID. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. We'll be right back after this short break.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Women rights activists in Egypt have raised their concerns about a law that seeks to change Egyptian women's rights around marriage and child custody. The draft law has been presented to Parliament for approval, but as Yasser Hakim reports, the proposed legislation has generated heated debate across the country.
The personal affairs laws that deal with marriages have always been controversial in Egypt. The latest draft, meant to improve the 21-year-old current law, has not been different. It has been strongly opposed by women's rights groups, especially the clause related to the powers of a guardian over the wife.
Clause number 6, which gives the guardian the legal right to divorce the woman from her husband. She can't even sign the marriage contract without a guardian's consent. Imagine we have female ministers who sign multi-billion-dollar contracts for their countries, but can't sign a marriage contract themselves.
Under another clause, that's number 103, a mother has no legal powers, although she's a custodian over her children. Only the father can renew their IDs and passports, manage their bank and financial documents, and approve or reject any of their traveling plans. Activists say these clauses reverse the rights women have earned recently.
On the political side, 1/4 of parliament are now women. 1/4 of the local councils are now women. 1/4 of the government are women. Economically, more women are holding leadership posts. It's mandatory for women to be board members of listed companies and banks, while SME loans go predominantly to women.
Those who have drafted the law say these clauses have already been in the previous law and are based on Islamic Sharia. And supporters defend the draft, saying it champions women's rights.
The draft law under study is a strong incentive for women. It recognizes her as a vital component in the family and community, and so gives her the power to reject a second marriage by her husband. It's no longer his decision alone. He can be jailed if he doesn't abide by her decision.
Another positive amendment is related to updating visitation rights to include electronic meetings and tougher punishments for those who break visitation rules. But even members of the public are divided into this debate.
At the moment, the draft looks fine. But personally, I think that the law should be reviewed by Al-Azhar Islamic scholars to ensure that it doesn't go against Sharia law, just for reassurance.
Why put a guardian on the woman? Isn't she married? She's not a minor. Why should I let someone control her in marriage or even divorce? She's a free person.
The draft is currently under discussion in Parliament. No date has been set aside for voting on the law yet. But experts believe public pressure can influence subsequent proceedings. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And coming up in sports.